report. We're broadcasting from Toronto, Canada. World leaders are arriving for the G8 and G20 meetings here amidst a massive security crackdown that'll mark the most expensive 3 days in Canadian history. President Obama is among the heads of state gathering in the remote town of Huntsville for the G8 talks today before heading to Toronto for the G20 beginning on Sunday. Large swaths of Toronto's downtown core had the appearance of a police state with an estimated deployment of over 19,000 security personnel, nearly 5 times the number at the G20 in Pittsburgh last year. A nearly 4-mile-long security wall has been erected around the G20 summit site at the Toronto Convention Centre, flanked by armed police at scores of checkpoints. The Canadian police recently added water and sound cannons to their arsenal of weapons that can be used to disperse protesters. A Canadian judge is expected to rule today on a court challenge to the sound cannons' use. The security price tag is around $1 billion, and some predict the total cost of the summit will surpass $2 billion. The thousands of activists here have been holding daily marches on a wide range of issues, including environmental and social justice, war, and Indigenous rights. We're starting today's broadcast with 2 guests. Charmeen Khan is a spokesperson with the Toronto Community Mobilization Network, the umbrella group behind the G20 protests. And John Clark is with us. He's the founder of the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, or OCAP. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Charmeen Khan, let's begin with you. What about these preparations for the summit, and what's happening how does that affect the protest?
Well, we've been expecting a great deal of security for the last few months, and have already been visited by police in the months leading up to the mobilizations and G8, G20. We've been hearing in the media and also from police themselves about the weapons that they'll be bringing to the streets of Toronto. So that hasn't been a secret. The impacts on the organizing have been a great deal of police intimidation. Before the week of mobilization began, we've had activists and organizers met by both CSIS and police on their activities. I was visited twice at my workplace. And
what do you mean you were visited twice?
Police came to my workplace twice just to ask about what the plans were for the G20 mobilization.
You know, we're having some sound problems, so we're going to try to fix the microphones. We'll go to a break, and then we will come back. We're here in Toronto, Canada, where the G8 and G20 summits are taking place over the next few days. Stay with us. We're going to try to bring you this sound as best as we can. We're in Toronto. We're overlooking the water, which is very choppy. There are planes overhead. Toronto is behind us. Our guests are Charmaine Khan and John Clark, two key organizers here in Toronto. Before we go back to Charmaine, John, I want to ask you why people are gathered here, why there is protest for the G8 and the G20.
Well, I think there's a recognition of the fact that the G20 going all the way back to the G6 in '75.
Explain what the G20 is, and the G6 and the G8.
Okay, well, the G6 in '75 was an initial grouping of the world's most powerful and important imperial nations, essentially. And they were formed at a time when the world economy was in crisis, and they were looking to rearrange the world economy on the basis of a neoliberal agenda, to impose massive cutbacks and austerity on populations, to reverse the relative concessions of the post-war boom years. And their strategy all along has been to do that. And this gathering, which has now been broadened to the G20 formation, I think is setting itself the task of essentially deepening the process of austerity massively. They just stabilized the system with this binge of spending, bailouts to corporations and banks and what have you, spent trillions of dollars, and they're looking to impose, looking to come to us for the bill. The International Monetary Fund is talking about 20 years of austerity. So these meetings are always vile, they're always reprehensible, they always need to be challenged. But this one in Toronto, I think, is exceptionally important.
And the difference between the G8 and the G20?
Essentially, they've brought some of the other economies in the world, major, often third world economies, to the table, so that they can form, I think, a partnership between the traditional